welcome to ESACH Talks, our monthly discussions on cultural heritage topics. My name is Riley Marshall, and I'll be the host tonight. I'm a member of the ESACH Coordination Committee. This month, we will be discussing sustainable tourism and cultural heritage in partnership with Our World Heritage, and we're excited to bring you our program. Just a friendly reminder that this event is being recorded and will be published later on YouTube. So if you wish to remain anonymous, we kindly ask you to leave your cameras off. Otherwise, you're welcome to leave them on. And before getting started any further, I would like to turn it over to the Vice President of ESACH, Carlota Marijuan Rodriguez, for a few announcements.
Hello, I just have some very quick questions, very quick comments. The first one is that we are still open for the call for abstracts for our meeting in Madrid, which will take place in June. You still have a couple of weeks to go. So I really encourage you to have a look and see, because maybe you can get, a cool trip to Madrid. So have a look at the links that my colleague just shared on the chat. And the other thing is that we have a photo competition happening. We want to create sort of a visual friend to the ESACH Talks. And so we are encouraging people to submit photographs, images, collages and sketches related to the topics that we have talked about in the ESACH Talks. So you can see all the details here. And again, you can message us if you have any questions. And that's all for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carlota. A brief overview of the events of tonight. We will hear first from our keynote speaker from Our World Heritage and get to know a little bit more about the work they're doing there. And then we will hear from our 4 presenters that were selected based on the call for abstracts. After all 5 have presented, we will have time for a short Q&A session. And you're also welcome to leave questions you have during the event in the chat, as we will be monitoring that during the event and then in the Q&A session afterwards. Just please remember to address the speaker that your question is for. And this is another reminder just to keep an eye on the chat. We are sharing more links about our presenters and their projects, so it's a great way to learn more about them and what they're involved in. And you will find also in the chat already a sign-in sheet, which we would appreciate if you haven't signed in already to register your presence at our event today with us. And also some information on the discussion topics that will be in the breakout rooms after the event. And I will wait until the end of the event to explain a little bit more how that works. But if you are able to stick around at the conclusion of the talks, we will break into smaller groups for a little bit further discussion on the topic of sustainable tourism. Without further ado, I think we will jump into the talks. Our first presenter will be Evinch Dugan from Our World Heritage. She's a member of the tourism team. And before we introduce her, we are going to show a brief video as a teaser for the 2021 debates. All right, and to expand on that, we have Evinch ready to talk about her experience and her experience with Our World Heritage. Evinch has a PhD in Management and Development of Cultural Heritage from IMT School for Advanced Studies in Lucca, Italy. She has experience as an assistant professor and as a part-time lecturer, and her interests revolve around heritage branding, industrial heritage, cultural roots, and tourism. We're happy to have you here with us tonight, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Riley, for this presentation and introducing me, and hello, everyone. I am also very happy to be here and organizing this with ESACH. Actually, I'm a member of ESACH, and I will just comment on that, how I became a member, because the responsible person is here sitting among us. Levent, thank you so much. thanks to Levent Tökün, we were just sitting on the beach in a very hot summer day in Antalya, and we were discussing many things about cultural heritage. And then he mentioned his participation in the conference, and he was very eager. So he just recommended that I should maybe consider to become a member of ESACH as well. And here I am as well. So actually, I would like to just briefly talk about myself and my academic background, maybe my academic journey, which is not very long, actually. I'm still young, by the way. And then I will also talk a little bit about our World Heritage Initiative. So actually, I studied tourism management in Istanbul. And then I moved to Berlin for my master's degree, which was in economics and management, as expected, because if you know, maybe if you're familiar with the system in Germany, they don't let you to really change your academic path and move to another discipline. And I was applying for a scholarship. I didn't get the scholarship at the end, but I was accepted to Humboldt University. And then I just started my master. Of course, I was so excited, and being Berlin was great, actually. But shortly, I just understood that the study area was not my cup of tea. And I was not really into studying economics. And I was so much interested in architecture, actually. And I just found myself strolling the streets of Berlin instead of studying and walking into the classroom, and just admiring that modernist architecture, which was also strange because I can expect, well, I was admiring this Renaissance architecture, I'm in love with Florence, and Venice is, of course, so beautiful, but modernist architecture, what's in there? And I needed to understand this. And actually, I was, even before attending this master program, I was interested in history of architecture, and I was closely checking the program at Istanbul Technical University. So I went back to Turkey, to my family again, to my home, and started master in history of architecture, which was, I mean, I feel myself real lucky because also in Turkey, they don't really let moving radically from one discipline to another sometimes. But it just happened for me, and I really actually gained a lot of things, and I was finally happy finding the program that's suitable for me. And actually, from tourism to history of architecture, it might seem very radical. It might seem like a really big change for a person, which, I mean, I didn't have a strong background for architecture, of course, but I really loved what I have learned. Actually, it was challenging, but it was also enjoyable. And I was thinking I should just bring them together. And I became very interested in cultural heritage, even when I was writing my master thesis. But before that, I went to Erasmus when I was writing my thesis, actually, to Florence, to Salerno, actually, but then I had an internship period also during the Erasmus program. And then I went back to Italy again for EVS, maybe if you have heard, it's European Voluntary Service. And it was an amazing project about cinema. I was working with elementary school children. We were doing stop motion projects, and I was always interested in this visual art, kind of photography and cinema. So it also, I mean, just gave me different skills and different opportunities to learn. And then I started my PhD, as Riley said, in Lucca, not far from Florence, actually. So I was escaping to Florence time to time because Lucca is a medieval city surrounded by strict and strong walls. So you feel kind of prisoned, even like, I mean, doing your PhD psychologically. It's a hard process, of course, but I managed. And I was traveling again. I found myself hitting on the road. First, I went to Belgrade and had a postdoc there. And I became very interested in industrial heritage, so which is one of the topics that we will, actually Valentina will present you her case. And I was interested in industrial heritage because as you know, Belgrade used to be a socialist city, and there's a big transition of this post-socialist transition. And the urban fabric was full of this kind of ruins, let's say. But then there was a kind of natural transformation. It was not top-down, nobody was forcing it, but it was totally becoming and transforming with arts and culture. And there were a lot of young people actually also contributing to this. So it was very exciting to see this change, because the change happens so fast, actually. And still, actually, I'm continuing this long research, let's say, applying to different contexts. My next destination was Berlin again. So it's a kind of a journey repeating itself, maybe. I'm just revisiting the cities that I have been, I have lived, I have studied, I have worked. But every time I just find different things there. So this time in Berlin, again, I was discovering the city through a different perspective, through totally different lens, and exploring the industrial heritage there. And yeah, I mean, I love research. I'm more like research-oriented person, but as an academic, of course, I have my duties as lecturing. Currently I'm still affiliated with Akdeniz University in Antalya, tourism faculty, tourism guidance department actually, but soon I'm going back to the start point where everything started, to my ex university where I started tourism management in Istanbul. So maybe it's a destiny, what I can say, I don't know. So we can discuss more, you can ask questions if you're interested in this experience, and I mean also personal questions after that. You can email me. I think Riley or Carlota can also just share it in the chat box, or I can do it as well. So I will just move to our World Heritage and talk briefly about our World Heritage initiatives. So I will just share my screen. Just wait for a couple of minutes, please. Sorry. It just says whiteboard. Let's see. Am I still the co-host? Because it just says me opens the whiteboard when I just click on the share screen thing.
You are co-host.
I don't know.
I can make you host.
No, it just worked, but I don't know why it just opens the whiteboard only.
I can share the slides on my end if you want me to.
Yeah, okay, that works as well. And thanks, Carlota. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Riley. Sorry about this technical problem. It was okay when we just tried, but yeah, I mean, this technology doesn't really help us. So yes, I mean, I will also explain who we are, but let me start with what's our goal. I mean, what our World Heritage aims. This initiative aims to protect heritage, support sciences-based decision-making, and stopping politicization and engaging civil society. So we need action. And this action is actually concentrated on 5 areas. I will just mention them briefly. So what's crucial is integrating effective participation and dialogue, of course. So we need to actually ensure a balanced geocultural and bioregional representation. Because also we know that I mean, when we look at the UNESCO's UNESCO's World Heritage List, there are some imbalances, inequalities, and this list and the whole actually implementation process needs some reforming. So also one of the actions should be encouraging and influencing this reform, this implementation processes, and also expanding the role of civil society. And to do this, the civil society should take responsibility as well. It's very maybe easy to say what's to be done, but the more difficult question is how we should do it. Actually, we all know what we should do, but then the second question follows, how we should do it. Another very important criteria is, of course, this credibility and representativity of this World Heritage Convention. And also very, very crucial, and why we need ESACH here is inspiring younger generations to take part in decision making and to shape future conservation practices worldwide. So yes, please, Riley, the next one. So actually, I'm talking on behalf of the tourism group, but we have 12 teams for our 2021 debate. What we're doing is we're concentrating on different topics each month. So as you see, there are like 12 teams organizing many events. And in January, we started with information technology. So, and the next tourism group, the whole February was dedicated to tourism events, discussing different dimensions of tourism and what can be the role of tourism for heritage areas, actually. And the final event will take place tomorrow. So if you're interested, you can still register, and please check our World Heritage website. And then each month, different topics will take the stage. I will just, again, briefly mention them. What are they? Diversities and genders, human rights, disasters and pandemics, new heritage approaches, sustainability, and actually the tourism group also launched some events with sustainability group. So these are not very independent. Okay, they're independent teams, but there are also like some exchanges between the groups. We're also organizing some events together. For instance, also heritage places and memory, I find very closely associated with tourism kind of topics as well. Conflict is a big issue, of course, as you may guess. Beyond the list is very interesting because, as I said, the list is not really representing the natural heritage, cultural heritage, mixed areas, but there is a huge kind of inequality because we see cultural areas are represented more than mixed or natural ones, or geographically, it's not equally spread around the world. So also we need to address those issues, what should be beyond the list, and of course opening up to the civil society. Next, please. So these two ladies are the brain of our team. Minja Yang is the coordinator, and Maria Gravari Barbas is the convener. But we are a very large and crowded group. There are a lot of members. So again, if you just click on the link, you can see who we are. Sorry, I will just mention today, actually tonight, we are two people belonging to tourism group, me, and also Valentina Araya is here. She is also a member of the tourism group. She will be presenting her research. But actually, till the last minute, I didn't know that she submitted, so it was a kind of surprise. So yeah, and the rest is just on the website. Yeah, so as I said, we will be, we actually organized many events, and tomorrow will be the last one, but not the least one. Yes, please. Riley, we can just switch. Actually, not only organizing, you can share. It was not the final one, actually. I don't know. So we're just drafting policy recommendations, and you can see here again on this link here. You can just enter that and you will be directed to another page. Actually, these policy recommendations are for tourism, but also we are collecting policy recommendations for other teams that I showed you for these 12. But if you just click on the link here, just going to the tourism group, you will be seeing those headings, like, I mean, what we're talking about, what we need about this policy recommendations. If you just go on to the next one. Yeah, you will be directed to this website belonging to Pantheon-Sorbonne, actually. I will just briefly mention the headings. So there are like 4. Yes, next, please, Riley. Sorry. There are 4 of them: economic development and well-being, equity, peace, and social justice, fraternity and solidarity, environmental conservation, intellectual development, conservation and valorization of heritage. So all these 4 main headings are also, we are asking you, I mean, to contribute to find and address those issues, how these areas are related to tourism and how tourism can negatively or positively affect, but more positively, let's say, as a friend. We are thinking tourism as a friend, but of course, there are negative effects of tourism, especially when it comes to also environmental or social kind of conflicts as well. So on the next slides, I will just briefly mention the subheadings, what is covered, for instance, for economic development and well-being, is tourism and the no poverty goal, and all these are actually linked to this sustainable development goals. So that's why we are so specific about these headings. The second is good health and well-being, and also tourism as a means to build resilient infrastructure, promote sustainable industrialization and foster innovation, and tourism and host communities. And the next one is the second one, for the equity, peace and social justice, fraternity and solidarity. We are addressing tourism and gender equality, tourism for peace and justice, tourism contribution to fraternity and solidarity, and partnerships for the goals. I am just reading those because you can also think some questions what you find interesting during the presentations, and you can formulate questions about this main, I mean, these headings, these titles as well. So the next, please, Riley. For the environmental conservation, tourism and the clean water challenge, which is a very hot issue. Tourism and climate action, that we're all suffering from the climate change, of course. Spatial planning and design guidelines, and tourism infrastructure benefiting local inhabitants. And lastly, please.
It won't go any further.
Oh, okay. So we can stop this and you can just click on the link and you will be directed to those I mean, areas that you would like to comment and offer some policy recommendations. And we are really expecting your contribution. And thank you so much. That's all from me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ivinç. And moving along to the next speakers of tonight, we have Oriata Daiko. Oriata is a young professional in the field of cultural heritage. She has participated in various projects in the field of cultural heritage in her country, Albania, and abroad. She will be presenting tonight the success of dark heritage museums. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to start showing. And you can see presentation. So you can see. So I will start to speak about two museums here in Tirana, the Museum House of Leaves and Park, which are two new museums.
Okay.
What?
Perfect, it worked.
Okay, thank you. I was speaking about two museums here in Tirana, the Museum House of Leaves and Bunkart, which are two new museums in the center of Tirana that have reached many local and foreign visitors. It is very interesting how two museums dedicated to the human suffering and persecution during the communist system here in Albania have become one of Tirana's cultural assets to attract tourists. In this presentation, in addition to a brief description of those two museums, we will tell why tourists find those dark heritage museums very attractive. Because the presentation will be very short, I will send you or I will write you in the chat some articles or the museum website where you can find more details and you can learn by yourself. First, I want to speak about the National Museum House of Leaves. This museum or this building was a mystery period building during the communist period. It was building and covered full of leaves, and from where the communist regime controlled the spite of people for 45 years. Nowadays, it commemorates the psychological violence and complete control of citizens during the communist regime here in Albania, during which 18,000 people were persecuted and 5,000 were executed. For book lovers, this museum will be a familiar atmosphere of the novel 1984 of George Orwell. Bunkart is another museum here in the center of Tirana. It was built in 1981 and during 1986 was intended to become a hiding place for Interior Ministry officials in the event of nuclear attack. Bunkart also holds documents, photos, and stories that tell of political persecution. The museum was also created as a memorial to honor the thousands of people who were executed by the communist regime. Those two museums are very famous among younger generations here in Albania. One of the reasons is the educational program of the museum for high school students, but also marketing, the presence in social media, and being different from other museums are other reasons to be one of the most attractive museums here in Albania. The educational program, Remember to Not Forget, aims to acquaint the younger generation with the dark past of communism here in Albania and to raise their awareness about the consequences of communism. In this educational program, students could talk to political prisoners. The involvement and cooperation of family members and persons who have been persecuted and interned by the communist system in the educational activities of a museum proves how the untold stories of their suffering in the past today become part of the development of a city. We can see that the inclusion of people persecuted by the regime in the activities of the museum is a form of liberation by telling the sufferings and traumas that they have been long suppressed within. These stories are a form of liberation for the entire society from a long period of isolation and silence. One of the problems of the dark heritage in Albania is the fact that people who suffered or the relatives of the victims and the people who persecute them are still alive. If dark heritage becomes an issue that could lead to debates, or there may be people who are sensitive to it. A study result shows that citizens do not see the heritage of the communist past as a major problem which Albania faces today. Compared to the population as a whole, the persecuted are not likely to see it as a problem. In the same time, over a third of the persecuted are of the opinion that this heritage is not a problem at all. Since people start to travel, they have been drawn towards sites, attractions, or events that are somehow linked to negative historical events where death, violence, suffering, or disaster played a major role. However, the main attraction to dark location is their historical value, rather than their association with death and suffering. We can find two distinct groups of visitors in those two museums. Visitors with personal connection, victims and relatives of victims, while the second group consists of general visitors with no direct connection. While random or ordinary visitors are attracted and like to visit places that speak about persecution, suffering, and death. One motivating factor is seeing to believe it. relates to participant interest in seeing the site out of a need to believe that such atrocities really happened. The second factor, learning and understanding, highlights participant interest in being educated about communism system. The third factor, famous tourist attraction, is composed of motives relating to the museum being famous in their city. We can say that tourism is one of the ways in which we attempt to approach and understand otherness. So, you can fully understand otherness and feel empathy when you know their dark side. In the end, I have two questions for you. That is, the first one, how effective can be dark tourism for a country when the people who suffered, but also the people who persecute them, are still alive, if not them, their relatives? Tell us the pros and cons. And another question is, do you think that museums or dark heritage sites can attract tourists, but also raise ethical issues in the society to which they belong? So I want to thank you for your attending. So I stop my... It is okay?
Yes, thank you very much, Ariana. And thank you for leaving us all with some questions to think about. And each of our speakers here tonight was asked to leave us with a few questions, and we will find a way to post those so that those of you that would like to respond or have thoughts to that can follow up with us and let us know what you think. And moving on to our next speaker, we have Ella Bekeshi from Budapest, Hungary. She is an archaeologist and cultural heritage professional. She recently co-founded Heritage Education Network in Belize, an organization dedicated to supporting heritage education and safeguarding heritage through sustainable development in cultural, creative, and tourism industries. She will be presenting stakeholder involvement in heritage tourism. The floor is yours, Ella.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. Let me just share my screen. Can you see it? All good? All right.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ella Bekeshi. I am, as it was mentioned, an archaeologist and a cultural heritage professional by training. I'm also the co-founder and co-director of Heritage Education Network Belize. We are a female-led nonprofit, and our goal is to help the sustainable development of stakeholder communities, cultural, creative, and tourism businesses, because we believe they are key stakeholders to safeguarding heritage. So today I will talk about how we can find sustainable solutions through the collaboration between cultural heritage and tourism disciplines, and how we at the organization see cultural heritage as an essential tool to reaching the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So let me just move on. Yeah, so central to achieving the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals is the role that heritage and tourism play in building community and creating partnerships. These are essential ingredients for reaching all the other goals. Now, we observed that a lot of ongoing issues in archaeology and heritage management are actually related to the exclusion of stakeholders from tourism, which often result in a disconnect between people and their culture. When people are not allowed to engage with the site in a meaningful way, or not allowed to share expertise and potentially earn from artisan skills through tourism, they will lose traditions, leave, and move on to other jobs that actually pay. And then this disconnect can lead to destruction and vandalism, as you can see in the photo. So it can also lead to loss of respect towards a site and cultural heritage, which then leads us into the conservation issues of tangible heritage itself. So we realized that it's simply not sustainable. We're not sustaining the heritage resource, these sites. We are not sustaining natural resources. We are not sustaining the people, and we are not sustaining entrepreneurial aspirations either. I just want to show a quote from Ms. Felicita Cantun. She is a Yucatec Maya activist from Belize. We work with her on a daily basis. Love her. She's a great woman. And she said to us, we cannot eat our dances. We cannot eat our art. We need to get paid to survive and to continue safeguarding our culture. And I think this sentence is applicable to anyone who is in the cultural, creative, and with that, ultimately in the tourism industry worldwide. So the question is, what can we do, right? What can we do? We, at our organization, we encourage research and the traditional knowledge of artisanal techniques, agriculture, arts, and we combine it with the economic potential of tourism. You know, tourism has become one of the most dynamic and fastest growing economic sectors. You know, archaeological sites and heritage spaces are literally $1 million a year revenue creators. Demands for more sustainable and transformative and culturally authentic visitor experiences are growing. Tourism and related industries provided around 10% of the world's GDP pre-COVID. So as we rebuild post-COVID, we can create these cultural projects that tourism can help make economically sustainable and long-lasting, because we all have issues with the budget, right? We in heritage, we all have issues with the budget, and we all have issues with finding money to pursue our projects. So, you know, just to go back to Ms. Felicita Cantun's case, her NGO does Maya spiritual ceremonies like weddings, spiritual cleansing, and so on. But she also offers these cultural experiences for tourists, and that is where her income comes from. Then another solution, heritage projects can include voluntourism, where visitors actually pay to travel and work with you and support a social or cultural cause, right? Tourism businesses can also do capacity building for people in the cultural sector, so we can collaborate. The Belize Local Association of Stakeholders in Tourism does capacity building in Belize during COVID, and they are developing cultural experiences with heritage stakeholders. Then you can do community-based exhibitions in museums or community gardens using traditional gardening methods, for example, and open it up to visitors. There are actually 2 Maya museums in Northern Belize that do just that, and we also work with them. So you can do community-based cleanup programs or cultural workshops, storytelling and oral history workshops. And these workshops can also be done online right now and, you know, fuel fundraising for heritage projects. So these are only a few examples I gathered from colleagues, and I think it would be great to discuss them in the breakout rooms later on. So, you know, without stating that tourism does not have its issues, mass tourism, cultural authenticity, and so on, we still have to see that the exclusion from tourism and economic opportunities are a very, very relevant and very urgent threat to tangible and intangible cultural heritage that heritage tourism can actually help to mitigate. So tourism needs to collaborate with heritage researchers from different disciplines and stakeholders, but, you know, most importantly, we have to raise awareness of the connection between heritage management and tourism and create dynamic networks. This is our team, my lovely friends who are on the board. We founded our organization together. And so I just want to, you know, with all that said, I just want to leave with this last question, the ultimate debate. Do you think tourism has a place in heritage management and in heritage studies? And I think we can discuss it more in the breakout rooms later on. Thank you so much for having me. I will stop sharing my screen. Let me try.
All right, thank you very much, Ella, for your presentation. And next up, we have Valentina Araya. Valentina is a sociologist from Chile and a heritage professional. She graduated from the World Heritage Studies program at BTU, Cottbus in Germany. And during her studies, she participated in several cross-cultural heritage projects related to the rescue of industrial heritage. Her master's thesis focused on the analysis of touristic offerings and demand in heritage neighborhoods in Germany. She will be presenting some of that research today. Welcome, and the floor is yours, Valentina.
Hi, good evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be here in this session and to see one of my colleagues and good friends here. So yeah, now I will share my screen. Okay, I will try to be very brief with my presentation. This presentation is based on my master thesis research about a specific heritage neighborhood in the Lusatian district in Germany, but with for the aim of this session that we are talking about sustainable tourism, I decided to focus on the whole region, yeah, the Lusatia region. So the title is Industrial Heritage Valorization through Sustainable Tourism, the case of Lusatia in Germany. So you can see here in this picture a view across the whole new lake land. So where Lusatia is located, so as you can see here in the map on the left, this red dot, this is the Lusatia region, and it's located in eastern Germany, in the south of the federal state of Brandenburg. And also in the other map, you can see that this region is one of the 3 regions that still are producing coal for energy production in Germany. So we have to understand that this region was, since the end of the 19th century and during the whole 20th century, was a region that lived a progressive process of industrialization based on the mining activity for energy production in Germany. And so basically was focused on the exploitation and refinement of the brown coal or lignite. As you can see in these pictures, these are historical pictures. On the top, on the left, this was a coking plant, and next to it, there is open cast mine in Grossleichen, and also on the bottom, you can see, I decided to put this picture with the former inhabitants of a worker settlement in this region. So what happened here that this region, after the reunification of Germany, started a progressive process of shutdown of the open cast mines and the whole mining industry. And since the last 3 decades, it started a process of transition and transformation into a new lakeland and transformation from the mining industry to a new industry of the tourism. So now this region is living its post-mining era, and nowadays Lusatia is one of the energy transition hotspots in Germany, and Germany is carrying out a completely phase out of all the coal mines, which is programmed for 2038. So that's why this region is living this structural change, and the results are yet to be seen, which means that this region will remain on the German political agenda during the next coming decades. So as you can see in these pictures, how the landscape has been transformed. And now is the largest artificial lakescape in Europe, yeah, featuring a chain of more than 20 lakes. And also, they started to develop a regional tourism, yeah, where with a lot of sport activities, especially for domestic tourists. And why we can say that this region is living a sustainable tourism? I would say because three main reasons. Because we can recognize an ecological recovery, also industrial heritage valorization, and also a social recovery. So now I'm going to explain these three points. So the first one, this ecological recovery, the authorities had decided to transform or to redesign the former mining landscape and into this new lakeland, and also they started a process of reforestation. Yeah, so they developed new forests, and also they established a new agricultural land. Yeah, so this is the first one. The second one is that they decided to keep, to protect, and to restore many of these mining infrastructure and giving value through tourism. So as you can see here in the map on the left, they create a whole route with different landmarks, and you can reach them by bicycle. And so that's why it's also so sustainable. So it's like promoting bicycles and a lot of sports and healthy life. Also in the picture, you can see one, the visitor center. This is also new. Also on the right, there is a huge viewpoint with a contemporary form. And also they keep a lot of this huge, this is a conveyor bridge, and now you can visit it. So this is one of the landmarks that we can find here. And the third point, why we can say that this region is developing sustainable tourism, is because they were worried about documenting the local memory, yeah, the social point, and they developed a lot of projects in order to collect the stories, hopes, expectations, fears of the local people there. So there is one main project, it's the Lautis and Einen Tisch, and there were basically a lot of focus group, and where the people shared their experiences, and they created a whole series of books of each this small town in this region. So why we can say that ESACH is a good example of a sustainable tourism, because first of all, they developed long-term master plan. And I think this is very important for each heritage project, because they developed this international building exhibition to explore land during 10 years. So during 10 years, they intervened this region with many projects, with many stakeholders also, and that's why now it works. Other point is that we can recognize that here they are political willing to keep and protect monuments, mining infrastructure, and declare them as monuments. Also, there are a lot of long-term initiatives and policies, also funds, a lot of money here, and multi-stakeholders sharing the same ideas and having same goals. And finally, there are still some current challenges in this region and some social problems. The main one is related to that still this region is living the immigration. So many people is going out of this region and going to other regions in Germany. That's why they are trying to create new creative industries to keep these people or to bring more people and families to this region. And also, we can recognize here that there are social problems related to the political thinking. Many of them are from the right-wing party. And it's very contradictory because these people doesn't want immigrants, but they need new people to recover this region. And finally, there are some also local social demands related to the necessity of integrate middle-aged people in the projects, because until now, many of these social projects have been focused on kids or old people. And that's why they need like more projects for middle-aged people. So, yes, this was my presentation. And I'm gonna stop.
All right, thank you, Valentina. And last but certainly not least, we have Hector Aliaga. Hector comes from Madrid, Spain, and has always been passionate about architecture and cultural heritage. International and multicultural experiences have been a part of his life. And through languages and diverse contexts, these have been his tools for his Horizon 2020 research projects. And he will be presenting to us today the Impact Tour project. Welcome, Hector, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, really. Good evening to everybody. It is a pleasure for me being here with all of you, presenting my collaboration in this project. I'm gonna share my screen, so please let me know if you see it. Is it okay? Yes?
Not yet,
Okay.
but we see it. Not yet
Okay.
full screen.
There we go. And I wanted to, well, at the end of the presentation, I will add in the chat the Impact Tour website so you can get more information. And well, here you go. First of all, I would like to apologize because I've been sick recently, so maybe I will need to stop for a while to get a little breath, but I think it's gonna work. So as you can see here, Impact Tour is a H2020 project, and it's you can see how the word itself, it comes from the well, improving sustainable development policies and practices to access, diversify, and foster cultural tourism. However, today we're gonna just focus on the interests and needs of sustainable cultural tourism destinations due to the 5 minutes presentation. So Impact Tour is actually a project, a huge project of 3-4 years length, and all over this process, we're gonna reintroduce all the lessons learned during the process to really get to know how things work for cultural tourism destinations in order to get a sustainable development for them. in all this process, you can see here all the partners involved, because it is a multidisciplinary project. In myself, I'm part from Cultura Viajes, but as well you can see over the partners such as Europa Nostra, you know already. So that's the reason why this is a huge and very complex project, but very interesting at the same time. And in this map, you can see here the countries they're taking part in this H2023 project, such as Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, Italy, Estonia, Cyprus, several. And as well, you can see how we've developing our strategies over 14 plus 5, a total number of 19 different cultural destination pilots to get information and to validate all the process. This is very interesting because with these destinations, we cover almost all type of cultural tourism destinations, such as inland, rural, islands, urban, suburban. So we take into account all different situations. Now, why and what impact? Why this is important? Just because cultural tourism has a crucial role in society, of course, before COVID was more clear, but was better. And 37% of total tourism sector was cultural tourism. However, due to the with this percentage, there's still a lack of data to evidence that this cultural tourism helps for sustainable development. And this is the reason why we're here, to work with pilot destinations during all this process, with an active communication with the stakeholders to get them involved all over the process. And to do that, we've created, or we're focusing on a specific research area for cultural and social issues, things that we didn't see in some other projects before. Furthermore, we should consider that cultural tourism should be as well as sustainable, accessible for all type of tourists and different situations, as you can see over here. And well, actually, in this huge collaborative process and project, we're just focusing on this case of a study for this presentation, and how do we make it possible? But how did we make it possible? We actually did a first approach, reading and looking for good practices to get to know how previous situations did with these cultural tourism sustainability actions, and with that multidisciplinary team that we've already seen in a previous image, we had debates and discussions to really create an individual survey adapted to all pilots that you've seen already in the map. So it was a common survey for them, readapted for particular situations and interests for all those pilots. To get that, we divided in these small sections, but there were more tags going through in parallel. But in this text I'm explaining today, we focused in 4 main areas of knowledge, which are, as you can read over there, governance strategies, stakeholders engagement, marketing and diversification, and business models. We also consider the COVID-19 situation, and we wanted to make a focus on social and cultural, such as 2 different criteria to work separately. Here you can see just an Excel table to get to visualize all the huge analysis we've done, highlighting in red some important topics and how we've divided in colors, just an Excel tool to see the process. And finally, here we have the results for the conclusions with the most relevant topics according to the main areas of knowledge. So for governance, the stakeholders and the destination pilots for cultural tourism, they really wanted, or they were really interested in national and local level strategies. When talking about the stakeholders, they really needed, or they were looking for a local participation to get them involved in all over the process. When talking about diversification, the word digitalization came out many times to get an external promotion through new technologies. And regarding the business models for these cultural destinations for their sustainable development, they were interested on the e-commerce and get to know how to work with the equilibrium between saturation and tradition. So sometimes too much tourism can make an impact cultural tradition. To make that, we have some ongoing actions, such as creating an indicator system adapted to the project and an engagement plan for the stakeholders. But those are the actions that are already going on in this month. Finally, here you have just a last image with the one of the destinations, which is Matera, in the southeast of Italy. There's destinations is involved, and there you have like a question I wanted just to ask all of you. Yes, in order to get to know if there is anything else or what else will this cultural destinations need for a proper sustainable development. This is all from my part. Thank you very much for listening to me and for this great opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hector. And that wraps up our speakers for today. We have time for a short question and answer session. If you have questions for any of the 5 speakers that have presented tonight, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask directly or type questions you may have into the chat and we will read them aloud. And I'll give you all just a few moments to think if you have any questions. I have one for you, Ella, while we're waiting. How has the situation in Belize with the absence of tourism during the pandemic, have there been specific practices or things that people have been using to maintain their traditions that perhaps depended on tourism funds in the past?
Yeah, it's not good. Belize's Belize's GDP, I think 40% of the country's GDP comes from tourism. So I think the economy in Belize is crumbling without tourism. And there are, let's not forget, there are a lot of indirect businesses that are linked to tourism indirectly. So a lot of people, food vendors on the street, they rely on tourists to buy from them, artisans who don't actually have a registered business, but they go and sell their products on the street to tourists, is very traditional, and it's very prominent in Belize, and that is just crumbling, right? So a lot of a very good thing we started noticing is that in-country tourism started to improve a little bit. It depends on the regulations and the quarantine regulations, but because it starts to improve a little bit, a lot of the tour operators and guides are actually offering tours for tours to Belizeans. That has been a shift, which I think has a positive impact, because Belizean people will learn more about their own culture, as opposed to before, when the tourism market was saturated with international tourists. And I think slowly people start to appreciate their culture a bit more, their history a bit more, and the Ministry of Tourism and the larger, governmental and public organizations and civil societies, they also are catering towards rebuilding in a more heritage-focused way. So even if right now we don't have a lot of tourists coming in and we're still missing that influx desperately, there is a good shift going on culturally. So I'm very interested in see how it's going to turn out when tourism picks up again, hopefully. Yeah, a long answer.
Interesting though, thank you. And I see we have one hand up. Sanchuan, do you have a question? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you for all your presentation. They are all very interesting and inspiring. I'm a master's student in KU Leuven, studying sustainable development. Now I have a question for all presenters. Maybe you can discuss and make some comments. So my question is this: during the pandemic, now it's obligatory to make a reservation before visiting some tourist attractions and museums. I think it's a very good measures for tourists to enhance the experience, and it's also a good way to protect some cultural and natural heritage. So after the pandemic, do you think the scenario will be still in use to protect cultural and natural heritage? Maybe it's not a good idea for local tourism practitioners because it restricts the visitors, restrict the numbers of visitors. But it's a good way to regulate the carrying capacity of tourist destinations. So, what's your comment?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go ahead for a brief comment. Well, in some way you're right, but just a few comments. It depends maybe on the cultural tourism destination, because not all the destinations are overcrowded. So some of them are still their potential cultural destinations to go through sustainable development based on cultural tourism and cultural heritage. So maybe the clue will be diversification in order to get an equilibrium in that current tour capacity you're talking about, and get enough and interesting activities to diversify all type of cultural tourists arriving at destinations. So not all the destinations have those problems of saturation. It happens sometimes, but we're discovering and we're working with some cultural tourism destinations that they have some other realities. So maybe we cannot take that as a common or global reality, in my opinion. I don't know if it works.
Yeah, if I may add, I was gonna say the same, that there are certain sites that are oversaturated with tourists because they are so popular, right? There are certain archaeological sites in the Yucatan in Mexico. Chichen Itza, it's a Maya site, extremely famous. Everybody, the main platform building is plastered everywhere, posted everywhere. Everyone wants to go to Chichen Itza, and there are hundreds of other sites in the neighborhood, right? There are many, many sites in Belize, for example. And then there's also the option of not going to the archaeological site per se, but to the villages around them. We actually, where I started my archaeology career was in a tiny village in the north of Belize, and it's right next to a massive archaeological site. It's called Lamanai, and you would be surprised how many tourists would go through the archaeological site, hundreds and hundreds a day, and there would be 0 people going to the village. And I'm not exaggerating, there were no tourists in the village, and there are no tourists in the surrounding villages. And people actually want tourists to come, because in such a remote rural area, the only other option than agriculture is going into tourism. But if there are no tourists because they only go to the archaeological site itself, then people don't have the option to join tourism and to gain benefits from tourism. And of course, we have to do this in a very balanced way. So it's not like we have to pay attention to the local circumstances every single time, because sometimes it can get problematic in terms of conserving or safeguarding culture. So we need to be it's a very delicate work, and it needs to be specialized, locally, not strictly following the framework, but just, loosely, and making, decisions based on the context. But yeah, I agree with Hector, yeah.
Thank you. And I'm going to have to cut off our Q&A session here. We've been running a little bit long today, but I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us. And if you are able to stick around, we will be opening up the breakout room shortly to allow for a little bit more discussion. A few announcements before we transition over is that next month's ESACH Talks is already in the works. Our theme will be communicating culture, which can range from everything from social media engagement to how to communicate difficult memories. So if you're interested, check our social media for the call for abstracts and the event registration, which will be on March 18th, the coming month. And for those of you that are staying with us for the breakout rooms, it's easy to join. All you do is stay on the Zoom call, and shortly there will be a small button at the top of your screen asking you to join a breakout room. All you have to do is accept. And so this is the time for those of you that are not able to stay with us for the conversation to go ahead and log off so that we don't put you in a breakout room accidentally. And it will take just a few minutes for the numbers to settle down, so that we ask you have a little bit of patience as everyone joins your breakout room, and we will share with you in the chat there questions so you can get started thinking on the discussion topics for the day. So thank you very much again for joining us, and a big thanks to our speakers as well. And we will see you shortly in the breakout rooms.